Thank you for joining the session. This workshop is focused on giving an actionable insight about how business app integration makes businesses more agile and how Zoho Creator, our low-code application platform, can seamlessly integrate with Zoho People. So before getting started off with the session, we have a few key pointers to be mentioned. All attendees will be put on mute throughout the session. You can ask your questions through Questions tab that is located on left side of the screen. Recording of the session will be sent to all the attendees, so you don't have to worry about that. And you'll be seeing polls and surveys during the session and post-session. We want everyone to participate actively. I'm Abhinaya Kannan from Zoho Creator team, and I'll be the host for today's session. So let's get started now. So today's agenda would be a brief introduction about Zoho Creator and Zoho People. So what are the relevant use cases wherein Zoho Creator, Zoho People integration becomes essential, BacktoWork importance, and what are the various approaches that would be taken to integrate Zoho Creator with Zoho People. So coming to the introduction part. So I guess some of you here might have had hands-on on Zoho Creator, and some of you here might have had hands-on on Zoho People as well. So I wanted to comprehend and give a glimpse of both Zoho Creator and Zoho People. So with respect to Zoho Creator is a low-code application platform with which you can create and customize applications rapidly. So when I say rapidly, it's 10 times faster than what you do with the web development approach. So maybe designing a framework or architecture, or maybe devising a structure for the database, or maybe network maintenance or server maintenance, or monitoring the security related issues and all that. All the abstract layer is taken care of by the Zoho Creator itself. So the time taken for the development will get substantially reduced. So you can focus more on the business logic. So we use a language called Deluge for backend processing and for the front-end development as well. So this is a Zoho's native scripting language. It involves minimum coding or no coding. Even anyone from the non-technical background can pick up the Deluge easily. So it also has ready-to-use snippets and also the inbuilt functionalities or features which can automate most of the business processes. So the interface will be completely intuitive and it has got drag and droppable interface. So with respect to the mobile application, Creator is considered to be a multi-platform, or what you call it as a cross-platform. Every app that we build in web is automatically optimized for other devices like smartphone and tablets. It supports both iOS and Android devices. So coming to Zoho People's introduction. As you know, Zoho People is an online HRMS system which is designed to manage and track all HR-related activities, maybe maintaining an employee repository, or maybe tracking the leave of employees, or maybe tracking attendance of employees or performance of an employee, and the list goes on. So coming to the use cases, I've listed few use cases here, wherein Zoho Creator and Zoho People integration would play a really vital role. So consider an enterprise solution built with Zoho Creator platform. So enterprise solution comes as a complete package, which will have order management system, product management system, delivery management system, inventory, asset maintenance, and all that. So on the Zoho People side, we will be having employee database, department, designation for all the employees, and custom modules like asset issue written, travel expenses, and petty cash. So you can fetch the employee database from Zoho People and push it to Creator, and you can use it across the enterprise solution. So coming to the next use case, assume you've built a solution for project management, wherein you can allocate the work for employees by integrating with Zoho People and retrieving the employee database. So coming to the third use case, wherein I've taken cab management system. Cab management system will have employee registration, assigning cabs for employee, pickup and delivery tracking, vehicle master, license and insurance modules. So this would also have dependency on employee database, which can be retrieved from Zoho People by integrating with Zoho People. So you can allot employees to the available cabs by integrating Zoho Creator with Zoho People. So coming to the back to work. So you must be aware that pandemic situation is still prevailing across the world. Number of COVID cases has been on a constant rise, and there are a lot of active cases as well. So inevitably, industry started operating. So it is the duty of every organization to ensure a safety work environment. Current situation is also demanding a new way of getting back to normal, right? So back to work created on top of Zoho Creator will help you with this transition. You can future-proof your workplace using back to work. It has got 11 modules like workplace setup, wherein you can add and manage your company branches, buildings, and you have employee setup wherein you can manage your employees database, and we have wellness setup, which will ensure the safe work environment and which will also have a track or monitor the health status of all the employees. We have asset setup, volunteer setup, and communication setup. As you can see, this employee, all the modules that is built on top of Creator inside Back to Work has a dependency on employee database. So once we integrate with Zoho People, we can retrieve the employee database and use it across the Back to Work application. So coming to the next slide. So what are the various approaches that can be used to integrate Zoho Creator with Zoho People? The first approach that we would take is inbuilt integration task, and the next approach would be using OAuth API. So let's get into each topic. First one is the inbuilt integration task. So when do we have to go with the inbuilt integration task? So if you want the data communication to happen within the same account, that is your Zoho Creator account, say for instance, Gabriel has an account in Zoho Creator, say account A, and he uses the same credentials to log into Zoho People as well. That is, he does a single sign-on. Now, if Gabriel wants to send or receive data from Zoho People, then inbuilt integration task would be the ideal way of achieving it. So within inbuilt integration task, we would also get a little in-depth and we would take various approaches for this. In case if you're using Creator's Deluge environment, then we would be using Zoho People's inbuilt integration task to send or receive data from Zoho People. And consider another scenario wherein you're using Zoho People's Deluge environment. So Zoho People comes up with the option to add custom functions and custom workflows. So if you're using Zoho People's Deluge environment, you should be going with Zoho Creator's inbuilt integration task to send or retrieve data from Zoho Creator. So I'll be taking into the application to show the demonstration with respect to the inbuilt integration task. So before that, I also wanted you to look into the link www.zoho.com/deluge/help. So this link has been shared in handouts. So you would be getting all the integration related task structure. When you get into this integration, just navigate to the option called predefined integration with Zoho services. So Zoho has around 50 plus products. Inbuilt integration services are available for almost all the products. So Zoho Creator also has an inbuilt integration task, and Zoho People also has an inbuilt integration task structure. So when we get into Creator's inbuilt integration task, we can see The operation types like get records by ID, create records, update records, all sorts of operations can be performed inside Zoho Creator's application. So when you're using Deluge's People's Deluge environment, then you should be using this Zoho Creator's inbuilt integration task. So this Zoho Creator V1 integration task is a deprecated one, so we will not be using this anymore. And coming to the Zoho People's inbuilt integration task, so this is the task that we would be using inside the Creator's Deluge environment. So let's see a sample structure on how it is being structured. So if I wanted to retrieve data from Zoho People, this is a task structure that I have to follow. So I'll just zoom it. Response is equal to zoho.people.getRecords. So it has a list of arguments like form name, from index, count, search criteria, and connection. So same as getting the records, you can also create records in people, and you can update the records in people, and you can get records by ID from people. So while demonstrating with an example, I would be explaining about the get records task. So this is a Zilker enterprise application built with Zoho Creator platform, and it has got employee module, branches, roles, department, announcement, asset module, inventory module, purchase order, order tracking, and delivery. So now what we would be doing is we're going to fetch department from Zoho People, and we would be populating it in the creators department field. So this is a form layout, and we're going to retrieve the department from Zoho People. When we get into Zoho People, so my Zoho Creator account is abhinaya.kg plus T0 at zohotest.com. And when I go to Zoho People's account, it's the same account, abhinaya.kg plus T0 at zohotest.com. So from my Zoho People account, I would be retrieving the department data. So marketing, information technology, services, sales, product, and HR. And I would be pushing it to the creator module, that is creator form, and I'll be populating it here. So once this is being done, it can be used across the enterprise solution, maybe for the approval, multi-level approval process. One person from the marketing department may raise the order, and one person in the sales department may approve the order. So in those cases, department would play a major role. So let's see how this can be achieved. I'll get into the edit mode of the application. And there is an option called workflow. Inside the workflow, we should get into the functions. And now we're set to create a new function. Let me name the function as People Inbuilt Integration Department. So the language that loads by default is Deluge. There are other languages available as well, like Node.js and Java. So for now, we'll be going with the Deluge. And we can select the namespace. By default is a namespace that will be populated. We can also add other namespaces. So I'm adding a namespace called Inbuilt Integration. So this is just to segregate all the functions, all the related functions, and it's for my identification purpose. So the written type is going to be list. That is, the response that I receive from Zoho People will be in the form of list. So I'm choosing the list variable. Now let's go about creating a new function. So as you can see, this the written type and the namespace that we have created and the function name that we've created can be seen here. And let's start writing the function from scratch. So I'm going to declare a variable, list variable, create list. And Now I'll be using the integration Zoho People's inbuilt integration task structure. So let's go to the documentation and follow the procedure. I'm going to copy this syntax and let me paste it in the next line. So response is a variable defined to collect all the responses or the data that is being fetched from Zoho People. So it will store all the departments into this particular variable, and Zoho comes by default. And when you keep a dot over it, it will list all the services that is inbuilt integration tasks available. Now we'll be using people service, and when you keep a dot over it, you'll get all the operation types or the scopes of operation. Whether you wanted to get records from people, or if you wanted to create records in people, or if you wanted to update records in people, you can just choose the operation type. I'm choosing get records since I'm going to get department data from Zoho People. So you can also see other attributes like form name, from index, count, search criteria. So form name is nothing but the module name in Zoho People from where we're going to retrieve the data. And from index specifies the index value from which I have to retrieve the data. Say, for instance, if there are 20 departments and I wanted to retrieve from 1 to 20, 1 to 50, then I would specify the from index to be 1 and the maximum count to be 50, so that it will fetch all the records between 1 to 50. And you can also specify the search criteria. So if you wanted to search with some criteria, you can specify the criteria here. And we can also pass the connection object as an argument. These are not the mandatory parameters. So I'm just taking this off. So we're just going to give the module name. So I'll give the module name as, let's go to Zoho People to get the module name. So if you wanted to get module names, field names, and the form properties for the inbuilt integration task, then we should go to settings. And when you navigate through, there is an option called forms. And we also have Zoho People API. So with respect to the inbuilt integration task, we should refer to the forms section. And with respect to the API, that is when we go for OAuth and invoke URL task, then we should go with this particular Zoho People API function option to get the field properties and form properties. So now, as we are using inbuilt integration task, I'll be getting into forms. So it'll list all the modules that are available in Zoho Creator. Now I would be choosing department, as we want department fields to be pushed to Zoho Creator. Here on the right hand side of the panel, you can see form properties and field properties. So we can get the form name from form properties, which is p_department. And you can get the form name, that is the field name. We're going to retrieve this particular field, that is department name, using the field property, that is the label name, department. So let's try to add the form name here, that is p_. Let's end with a semicolon. Now I'm going to info the statement response that we will be receiving in the form of JSON. And since we will be receiving lots of records, we are iterating through each record using the for loop. And I'm going to write a for loop for that. For each rec in response, that is the data that is being retrieved, I'm going to add the response to the list variable that I've created. So for that, I'll be using the syntax L_department add of rec dot get JSON of, we should specify the field name within. So as we saw this in Zoho People, department is a field name. So we are retrieving department from here. Now let's return this variable L underscore department. So let me hit on the save button and we'll try to execute this function. Now you can see that we have received the response in the form of JSON. The return value is marketing, information technology, services, sales, product. Whatever we have seen in this people account, we have, I'll just take you to the people account, whatever the departments are available in this people account, we have received as a response in the form of JSON here. So now we have to add this response to the Zoho Creator form field department. So what do we do for that? Go to the form workflow and there is an option called new workflow. Click on the new workflow and you have to choose the form. So department is a field where I have to populate the data that is being retrieved from Zoho People. So I'm choosing department. Run when a record is created or edited. I'm choosing this particular option. So when do we have to trigger the workflow? I want to trigger the workflow when the form is getting loaded. So when the form is getting loaded, I want the department field to be populated. So what's the name of the workflow? I'm naming the workflow to be fetch department from people. So now let's write a workflow for this. I'm going to clear the department field. And the next action that I would do is inside the input of department, I'll be adding the response that we have retrieved. So UI dot add of, I'm going to call the function, custom function that we've written. So let's use this app. When I keep a dot, it will list all the namespaces that we've created. So inside this inbuilt integration namespace, we have added a function which is people integration inbuilt department. So I've called this function here and I've added it to the UI. Now when we save this workflow and we'll try to execute, I'll refresh the form. Now what happens is the department field will be loaded with the data from Zoho People, marketing, information technology, services, sales, product, and HR. So this is with respect to the inbuilt integration task for getting records from Zoho People. You can also perform other actions or operations like creating records in Zoho People or updating records in Zoho People using the respective integration task that is given in the link. So next, we will be moving on to the invoke URL. So let me take you to the slide. So when are we supposed to use invoke URL and the connection object? And what is connection? So if the inbuilt integration tasks or any operation type is not available for any of the services, then we go for this invoke URL with connection object as an argument. So connection enables you to integrate with other Zoho services. Once you add a connection for the cloud service, you will be able to integrate Zoho Creator with that particular service. And you will also be able to perform actions that are permitted within that connection. So we also have inbuilt connectors available for Zoho services and third-party services. So connectors can be used in inbuilt integration task and invoke URL task as one of the arguments. And let's get into the application. And with respect to the single sign-on system, if you're using Zoho services, it is applicable only with the single sign-on system. Okay. So let me take you to the application. And we will take another demonstration to illustrate how this invoke URL and connection object works. Let's take a designation field. So this designation field Again, I'm going to populate the designations from Zoho People, officer, associate, executive, head of department. I'm going to fetch all those designation related records and I'll be populating it here. So using the connection object and invoke URL. So let's see how this can be done. Again, let's go to the custom function. So we will write a new function. Zoho People inbuilt integration task for designation. And let's select the language to be deluge. And we will select the namespace. We'll add the namespace as invoke URL. And let's select the return type as a void as such. And let's create a function. So how does the integration invoke URL look like? On the right hand side, we have all the functions and syntax. We can just drag and drop this invoke URL. So the syntax assist is opened and you can use this to further accomplish the function, or you can go with typing the variable name. Response is equal to invoke URL. So let's take the URL. So we have a documentation for Zoho People's API that also has been shared in handouts. So going to the API, we have API for forms. There is a custom modules or any other forms that is available inside Zoho People. And we have API for timesheet, cases, onboarding, employee onboarding. And we have API for attendance, record count. You can refer to this particular documentation, www.zoho.com/people/API. So this has been shared, as said before. So now what we would be using is get bulk records API from forms API section. So we're going to retrieve the designation data from Zoho People's account. So I'm using the same account A, that is Zoho People account is abhinaya.kg plus t0@zohotest.com. And the creator's account is also the same. I've used single sign-on system. So now when looking into the URL structure, let's just copy this URL and use it inside. So let's declare a variable called s_URL. And let's place this URL and let's get all the records. Let's not specify any criteria because we have limited designations. And I'll name the form name to be designation. So I'll tell you where to get this designation from. Go to Zoho People and you have an option called settings. As said before, if you're going with the Zoho People's API, then you'll have to get into this particular option and choose the designation. This is the module name. So I've taken this as a module name and I've used it here. So let's end it with a semicolon and I'll pass this as an argument. So invoke URL has a structure wherein you will pass a URL type, that is whether it's a get type or post type. And if you have any parameters and if you have any header information, then you'll pass all these as a argument inside invoke URL task. And these are all not the mandatory option. So we will remove this off. Now we are going to pass in the connection object as an argument. So the type is get, since we're going to get the records from Zoho People. We can also post the records to Zoho People. by using the post method. And now let's see how to add a connection and use it within this invoke URL. So for that, let me get into the application. I'll go to the home page. And in the home page, we will be having the setup option. So on the top right corner, you can see the setup option. When you navigate through, there is an option called extension under which you can get the connections option. So when you get into connection, we can see all the connections that I've created as being listed here. And we can go ahead and add a custom connection. Click on add connections. So these are the pre-built connectors that are available for third-party services like QuickBooks, Salesforce, PayPal, Payflow Pro. And with respect to the SMS services, we have Twilio, Clockwork SMS. And with respect to the Zoho services, it is Zoho OAuth. So now, since we are connecting to Zoho People, we will be going with this Zoho OAuth. So here you can see that all the Zoho services are listed, like Desk, Orchestly, Notebook, Zoho Work Drive, Zoho Assist, Zoho Books. And you would also be having other services listed here. And you can also see the module type that is available for each service, vendor payment, vendor customer payment, and all that. Here you can define the scope of operation, whether you wanted to perform creation of a record, or whether you wanted to perform deletion of a record, or you just wanted to read records from Zoho Books or Zoho People. You can just define the scope of operation. So this has to be in sync with the operation type that you're defining inside the invoke URL. So let me choose Zoho People. And here is our Zoho People, zohopeople.allpeoplesapi.all. Now I'll be choosing and I'll hit on this authorize button. So connection name has to be given. Zoho People connection. When you hit on this authorize, it will take you to a page where it'll show an information. So Zoho Creator will request for the information access from Zoho People. And by just giving on accept, it is authorized to have access to the protected resources data. Now we've added the connection. Let's use this connection. This is the connection that we've added. So let me use this connection. With this connection, you can have a granular control over the type of access of data that you're having to the protected resource. So we will place it inside the connection and we will pass it on as a string variable. Let's now end with a semicolon and we will info the response. So when you save and execute, you can see the designation details as a response in the form of JSON format. So let's just copy this and put it inside the JSON formatter. And I'll process this. So you can see the structure as follows. This is a map variable and this is a list variable. And we have ID, record ID of Zoho People. And we have other informations like designation, the modified date, Zoho ID, added time, and modified time. So it is available for all the records that is available that we have retrieved from Zoho People. So let's try to, okay. Now we're done with the invoke URL task as well. So the next topic that we will be discussing about is OAuth API. Now I'll be moving to the slide. So initially we were using OAuth 1.0, which had its own limitations like auth token expiry. The auth token generated will have a lifetime validity with OAuth 1.0. So auth token once compromised, it will be compromised forever. Then it would be like a security concern when you're handling with the personal data or banking information. So that is when we came up with the concept of expiring the auth token, which is the concept of OAuth v2 API. So Zoho's API uses OAuth 2.0. Here you needn't share any user credentials, and asset the token access token gets expired for every 1 hour. So this token can be generated for each client instance. So to avoid the data flow interruption, with the access and refresh token generated, we will use refresh token to generate new access tokens, and that will be used for the further processes to have access to Zoho People or Zoho Creator. So let's move on to the next slide. Okay, where do we have to use OAuth API? Say if you wanted the data communication to happen with different accounts, then we would go for OAuth API. So assume that Gabriel is associated with Zoho Creator account A, and Katie is associated with Zoho People account, there is account B. And if Gabriel wants to send or receive information from Zoho People, then he would be using OAuth, and that would be the ideal option to go with. So this OAuth API is available for Zoho Creator, and it is available for Zoho People as well. So as said for the inbuilt integration task, if we are using Zoho Creator's Deluge environment, then we should be going for Zoho People's OAuth API. Take the other way around. If you're using People's Deluge environment, then you would be using Creator's v2 OAuth API to send or retrieve data from Creator, right? So here, Zoho Creator's v2 API are RESTful APIs. So this helps to interface with the Zoho Creator apps, maybe to fetch the data or update the data or delete the data in the applications created using Zoho Creator. So to get the detailed session on v2 API, we have an upcoming session working with Zoho Creator's v2 API examples and best practices. So this will happen on November 16th, 10 p.m. IST. You can register for the event using the link given here, https://zoho.2/creator-learning. So you can get to know more about v2 OAuth API for Creator by attending this session. Coming to the Zoho People's OAuth API. So as I was saying, if we are using Zoho Creator's Deluge environment, then Zoho People's OAuth API would be used to send or retrieve data. So this also uses OAuth 2.0 protocol for authentication purpose. And you can also define the scopes to restrict or provide access to the data. And even if the client is hacked, the information will not be revealed. So there are certain terminologies associated with Zoho People. We'll try to understand these terminologies. This is also available in API documentation. So I'll take you to the documentation part now. Now, when you get into Zoho People's API documentation, we have an option called authentication. So under this authentication, click on OAuth authentication, and it will take you to this particular page. So wherein all the terminologies are listed. So let me explain about each of these terminologies and what it does. What is a protected resource? So what are the data that is available inside Zoho People's server, that is resource server? They are called protected resources, may be employee details, leave related details, or attendance related details. They all come under the protected resource category. And coming to the resource server, so all these protected resources are hosted inside this resource server. So the user who uses the account and who grants permission to these resources like employee details, leave, we call them as a resource owner. So a client here, with respect to this particular approach that we are explaining, the client would be Zoho Creator. That is the application that sends request to Zoho People, that is a resource server, to have access to the data inside the protected resource. So the client ID and client secret, we would be receiving this client ID and client secret on registering the client with Zoho People, that is endpoint resources account. We also have authentication server on Zoho People's site, and this authentication server would initially provide the authentication code, and with the help of this particular code, we would be receiving access token and refresh token, which would be further used to have access to the data inside Zoho People. So we also have an option called scopes. You can define the scope by using scope is equal to service name dot scope name dot operation type. So let me explain about the service name. So Zoho People, Zoho Books, they all come under the service name. For now, we are taking Zoho People. Dot, we are defining the scope name. That is the resources or forms that are available within Zoho People. So it could be employee, or it could be forms or timesheet. And you can also define the operation types. So these are the three attributes that is related to the scope. And you can define the operation type to be create, update, read, delete, and all. So if you wanted to have access to the create data, or if you wanted to have access to the updated data, then you can go for any of these operation types based on the requirement. So these are the set of available scopes inside Zoho People. You can refer to the documentation part. Now going on to the next topic in the slide. So to have a better understanding, as we said here, Zoho Creator will be the client and Zoho People will be the endpoint resource. So the data flow from either side will happen using OAuth API. Here, as I explained with a previous flow, Katie and Gabriel. Katie would be the resource owner, that is Zoho People's user, endpoint user, who would grant access to Gabriel. So initially, Gabriel would be requesting or sending an authorization or authentication request to Katie, requesting for the access to protected resources. So if Katie wants to provide an access, what she does is she will provide two keys, that is access token and refresh token, with which Gabriel can have access to the data. This is what is explained in the flow. So let me just zoom it out. So from the creator, that is the client, an authentication request will be sent to the authorization server. This authentication server and resource server will be on Zoho People's side. So this authorization server will initially produce an authentication code. So this authentication code will be valid for just a couple of minutes, after which it will get expired. So with this as a base, authentication server would also produce access token and refresh token. So Gabriel can use this particular access token and refresh token to request access to the data in the resource server. So this is how the flow goes. And again, we'll go to the demonstration. First, I would be taking you through a process wherein we would be registering for the client and we would be receiving the auth token. After that, we would be getting into the application and see the actual process. So here is a use case. We have an employee database in Zoho People, and we also have a form created in employee. We are retrieving or getting records or data from Zoho People. That is, we are pushing the data from Zoho People to Zoho Creator. Assume that we have a form called asset request built in Zoho Creator. And we also have a custom module called asset issue and return. In case if the organization wants to issue asset to an employee, the employee can raise the asset request through asset request form created inside the Zoho Creator application. So once the request is created, it will be pushed from Zoho Creator to Zoho People. So both the push and pull operation happens here. So once the sysadmin receives this request, he will be updating the issue quantity once he has issued the asset to the employees. And finally, it will get updated in asset inventory inside Creator. So this would be the demonstration use case. So let's get into the client registration process. We can follow the steps that is being given here. Steps to generate the OAuth token. So how do we generate the OAuth token? First step is we need to go to the developer console. I'll be opening this in a browser where I've opened the endpoint resource, that is Zoho People, which is within a different account, abhinaya.kg plus t70 at zohotest.com. As I said earlier, so the data communication is within different account. That is, the people is in different account here, and my creator is in T0 account. So the creator here is in T0 account, and the people is in T70 account. So the data communication is going to happen between these two accounts. So we were to register the client where we have the endpoint resource account opened. When we get into developers console, we have an option on right hand side, which is add client. So we can register the client using these options. So if you don't have any applications and if you just wanted to test it, then you can go for the self client. Now, since we've created an application, we can go for the server-based application, create now option. Now, let me give the client name as Zilker Solution. And we will also give the homepage URL, which is HTTPS. So it has to start with HTTPS. Otherwise, the homepage URL will not be accepted. And we will also give the authorized redirect URIs, which doesn't need to be valid here. So let's give it a callback. So I'm creating a client for this Zilker application that I've created inside Zoho Creator. That is for this particular application. Zilker Enterprise. Now, if I hit on create, it will give me the client ID and client secret. So this is how Zoho People will recognize the client and will provide access to the protected resources. So let me copy this client ID and client secret. And we also have other details like authorized redirect URI. which we would be using for the further processes. And we have the settings option. We can choose whether to use the same OAuth credentials for if you had gone for some other DC. So if I'm choosing the option to be yes, you can use the same OAuth credentials if you're using EUDC or AUDC or IMDC. So the next process would be, we've added the client, and let's go to the documentation again. Let's follow the step-by-step procedure given here. And the next process is to send the authorization request. So the client will be sending the authorization request to Zoho People, that is the resource endpoint. For that, this is the URL that I will be placing in this browser where I have opened endpoint resource, that is Zoho People. Let me place it here. So here we have defined the scope, that is Zoho People dot forms, and I wanted to perform all sorts of operation. If you wanted to add more scopes, you can give it by using comma, and we can add the client secret here. We've taken the client secret. So let me place it here. And we also have few other parameters to be passed. Here we have the access type to be offline and online. So the difference is when you go for offline, you will be receiving both access token and refresh token. But when you go for online, it would only give you the access token. So now let's go for offline, so that we would be receiving access token and refresh token. So we do not want the data flow to be interrupted in middle once the access token expires. So with the help of refresh token, we'll be generating new access token instantaneously. So let's specify the redirect URL as well. What we have received when we were registering for the client. And yeah, we're done. So before hitting on the enter button, we will just go about with the third step, because from this particular step, we would be receiving a grant token, that is the authorization code, which will be valid only for a minute or two. So this code would be used for the further process. So let's be prepared with the further process, and then we'll hit on this enter. The next process is to generate the access token. So we should be using the post request using this particular URL. So I'm copying the URL, and let's go to Postman. So let's try to add a post request here. We should pass on the arguments. A grant token we would be receiving from the previous step, and redirect URI, we have it already in place. So let's use that redirect URI. And we have client ID. Let's pass this as an argument, and we also have client secret. So this is also one of the arguments that needs to be passed on. And we have the authorization grant type to be authorization code. So we have filled in almost all the parameters. We now will have to fill in the grant token, which we would be receiving from the previous step. Now let's go to the URL, and now if I hit on enter, I will be receiving a code. So now it is Zilka solution from Zoho Creator is asking for the requesting for an access to the protected resource. So if I'm clicking on accept, inside this URL, you would be getting a code. So if you've given a valid URL, you would be receiving the code inside that. Since it's not a valid URL, we're taking it from the browser. I'm copying this and I'm pasting it inside the code. So we're done with the process. Now, if I hit on send, I would be receiving the access token and refresh token. So this is the response that we'll be receiving. Access token, refresh token. As I said, this access token will get expired within an hour. So the next step is to use the refresh token generator to create a new access token. So let's create another post method. Here it's a post request, and we will pass on other arguments like client ID, client secret, refresh token that we have received from the previous step. From the previous step, we'll have to copy the request, the refresh token, and we'll have to paste it here. So we have passed on almost all the parameters. Now, if I hit on send, we would be getting a new access token. This access token will be passed on as a header parameter inside the function. So I'll be getting into the application to show you how this works inside. So Zelker Enterprise. Here we have employee database, empty. So here is where we will be retrieving data from employee data from other people account. We have name, email ID, phone number, and all the employee related information. And we also have a form to for an employee to raise the asset request. So this once created will be pushed to Zoho People. So I've created a couple of functions to perform this particular operation, and I'll be showing you that. So forms, and this is the operation that we are going to perform. And let's see how we have to request. So this is the request URL, and this is the header information that we have to pass. And this has got auth token, which we have received now. And this is the response. So response, I'll put it in the JSON and I'll show you how this looks like. So let's get into the code. Let me explain you how the code works. So I've written a function to get employees. So I've written a custom function. I've added the refresh token that I've received using Postman request, with which I'll be generating the new access token. So this is the custom function I've written. It's always the best practice to write the custom function instead of going for Postman. So I've passed on client ID, client secret, brand type, and redirect URI as a param to get this access token. And I also have used the invoke URL post method. So inside this invoke URL, SURL, I have included this particular URL. And once the post request is sent, we would be receiving the response in the form of JSON. I mean, initial step, we would receive the access token. I've incorporated the access token inside the header variable. This is the map variable that we have declared. M underscore request information, M underscore parameter, M underscore request params, header information. These are the map variables that I've declared. So as per the structure given in get records API, we would be using this authorization, Zoho OAuth token and access token generated. And we would be using another invoke URL get request task to get records from employee database. So this is the URL that we saw in Zoho People API documentation. So this is what I've copied to get records from Zoho People. And I've passed on the header information as m underscore header info. So within which I've added the access, the new access token generated will get stored here. And the next thing is about once you receive the response on executing the function, we would be receiving the response in the form of JSON. The structure will be in such a way that let me just copy the structure I'll paste it in JSON. So if I process, as you can see, first we have the map variable, and next we have the list variable within which all the record IDs are fetched. And below this record ID, we have the key value pair. That is email ID, created time, address, date of birth. Everything is within this particular map variable. So to fetch the list of records within this record ID, I've written a for loop. So initially, inside the result, I've gotten the response and the result map variable, and within which we have the list of record IDs. And inside the record IDs, we will be retrieving the key value pair. So all the values will be retrieved, and we will be parsing through the values, and we will search for the condition wherein if first name and last name is not equal to null. If this is not equal to null, then we would perform the insert record operation. We would be inserting all the employee details that we have retrieved from Zoho People into employee inside Creator. So here we've done the mapping as well. Added underscore Zoho is equal to Zoho.login username. And here name dot last name is a field property taken from Zoho Creator. And I've mapped it with the last name in Zoho People. Same as that, I've done mapping for first name, employee ID, Zoho ID, and email ID. So when I execute this task, you can see the response here. We have received the record ID. Inside that, we have the key value pair, all the values. And now let's go and see if it has gotten added inside the employee database. When we go to employees, all employees, you can see that this ID is created. This is creator's ID, and this will be Zoho People's ID. And we have mapped the first name with creator's name field and the last name with creator's last name field, email ID with the email field and creator. So it has fetched all the data from people and it has pushed to employee. Now, I have also written a custom function for asset issue and return. So let's get into that particular function. Here, push request. Wherein I have used the post request. While retrieving the employee database, we were using get request. Here I've used invoke URL, post request, header information as one of the parameters, and also the URL to insert the records into the asset module inside Zoho People. So this is also available in API documentation. You can refer to that. So when I execute this function, let's try to add a record inside asset request. So we would receive all the employee request. Let me choose employee S1. And let's go to all asset request. So we would have received an ID from creator. And this is what we would be passing on while executing the function. And we would be pushing this to Zoho People. So if I execute this function, it will ask record ID as a argument. And if I submit, you can see that data got added successfully. So when I get inside Zoho People and when I get inside compensation, there is an option called asset module. I'm sorry, I'm into a different account. So we should get into T70 account. So go to compensation, get into asset, and you would see the latest asset record getting added to Zoho People. So this is how OAuth works with respect to the integration between Zoho Creator and Zoho People. So you can also perform other sorts of operations like maintaining the inventory or having track of inventory using the custom functions and workflows. So let me move on to the final part of the session. And let me take this as an opportunity to inform about the upcoming session, that is Bring Your Own Code to Creator with Java and Node.js function, which is going to happen on November 10th, 10 p.m. IST. You can register for the event using the link given, https hyphen double slash zoho.to slash creator hyphen learning. And you can also try Zoho Creator for free using the given URL, https double slash www.zoho.com slash creator. So with this, we are coming to end of the session. Thank you once again for participating in the session. I guess the session was useful and you had some key takeaways from the session. Thanks a lot.